Hey, how's it going, everybody, and welcome back into the SFS channel. My name's Gavin, and today I've got 5 must-bench wide receivers for Week 6 fantasy football action. We are now into bye week territory for the 2021 year, and we've got an even thinner crop of names to take advantage of and utilize for our lineups here, as every week going forward now until the fantasy playoffs, we're going to be missing a handful of teams each and every week, so it makes these lineup choices even more critical and the decisions we make even more important to our weekly fantasy success. This is where things get real. This is where the fantasy playoff teams get thinned out, and some of us are washed away into the sad abyss of losing records for the year. But I'm here for the ride to help you guys make the right choices and get it done this fantasy season. So if you've got questions for me about your own individual teams, drop those down in the comment section below, and I'll get to as many of you as possible before kickoff for Sunday's game. So thank you all so much for tuning into today's video. Let's hit the intro and get straight in to our first must-bench wide receiver. Alrighty, here we go. As we get into today's first must-bench wide receiver, a quick note, I am repping some official SFS merch for today's episode. If you'd like to go check it out for yourself and see if there's something on our site you would like to purchase, go check that out. The link is in the description of today's video, or you can head to my website, sizzlefantasy.com, and click the SFS shop section on the header of the website. See if you like anything, rep the brand here, support the content. We'd really appreciate that. So Tyler Lockett is the first precautionary player that we've got up on the block here. Some teams now are not going to have the luxury to sit a very established wide receiver too like Tyler Lockett. But if you have better options, and if you've got other players with some really nice upside for this week, Tyler Lockett is a player who I feel very uncomfortable with. And I think that when you look at some of the boom and bust production that he's had to this point in his career, and particularly the last season and a half now, this is a game that really worries me. Tyler Lockett's best skill is the deep ball. He is sensational, running past defenders, finding separation deep, and scoring plays over the top. But what did he lose that was honestly the biggest asset to his fantasy success last week? Russell Wilson, the middle finger injury, out 6 to 8 weeks. You're now taking one of the best deep ball passing quarterbacks maybe in the last decade and replacing him with Geno Smith, who is a career backup and failed franchise quarterback experiment for the Jets. Now, Geno came in and he looked really nice for a drive, a series. He took the Seahawks 97 yards, scored a touchdown in that game against the Rams on Thursday Night Football. But guess what? They weren't prepared for Geno Smith. They game planned for Russell Wilson. There has been an extra long week because the Seahawks played on Thursday Night Football to prepare for Geno Smith and the offense that's going to be rolled out by Pete Carroll on this team this week. Geno Smith, as good as he looked, despite the fact that he had that long drive, is still not Russell Wilson. It is a downgrade, and no matter what you might want to say, the deep ball efficiency and the ability to put the ball in between the numbers and the breadbasket, whatever you want to call it, is not going to be the same for Tyler Lockett here. There is a very obvious and evident downward trending arrow for the upside I see for Tyler Lockett on a week-to-week basis. And I think especially in the first game here is when the chemistry between those two is going to be at its weakest point. And if you want to talk about tendencies for backup quarterbacks in the National Football League, more often than not, you're going to see them lock onto one player and throw them the ball repeatedly and sometimes not make proper reason adjustments. Now, Geno Smith's a vet, but what he did was throw DK Metcalf the ball over and over again when he was under center for the Hawks on Thursday night. DK Metcalf's the more prototypical wide receiver one in an offense. He's the alpha wide receiver for this team. I expect him to be the player who sustains more of his value than Tyler Lockett during this stretch without Russell Wilson. And who knows? This is a long shot. This has nothing to do with fantasy football. But if the Hawks have a really rough stretch of games here, they're kicked out of playoff contention by the time Geno Smith returns, maybe the Hawks just shut down Russ for the year and he doesn't come back to the field. That's why I've been talking about Tyler Lockett somewhat in the sense of a sell candidate for this week, because I don't think he'll be able to maximize his ceiling numbers that he would have been able to with Russell Wilson. So a lot to unpack there. The moral of the story here is less so about the Pittsburgh Steelers defense and more of just the change in offensive situation I see for the Hawks this week. The fact that they have a pass rush that can get after Geno Smith, disrupt his pass patterns, and Pete Carroll's probably going to come in here and try and run the football as much as possible. He's not going to want to put the game in the hands of Geno Smith. He's going to want to try and play ground and pound smash mouth football and get the job done that way. If the Hawks win, that's how they're going to go about doing it. Henry Ruggs here. Las Vegas taking on the Denver Broncos. Henry Ruggs was probably more of a flex option to begin with, a low-end wide receiver too in some desperate situations. But obviously with all the changes in Las Vegas right now, transitioning from John Gruden being your head coach to now an interim head coach, I think that's a big adjustment. There's been a lot of noise around this team this week. I talked about this with Josh Jacobs in the must-bench running backs video. This is a stingy Denver Broncos defense, and this would not be the first opponent that I'd want to be facing coming off news like this, an adjustment for your entire team like the Raiders are now going to be facing. The Broncos have a good back end, and they got kind of embarrassed last week when Ben Roethlisberger had a lot of time to throw the football in the pocket and was able to pick them apart with Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool. Obviously, Juju Smith-Schuster's out for the season now. We'll talk about that another time. Henry Ruggs, though, is going to be very, very reliant on hitting a home run ball in this game, and when you've either got to beat Patrick Surtain, Kyle Fuller, Bryce Callahan if he's in the slot, Ronald Darby's coming back from injury, it sounds like this week, and this team has an excellent pair of safeties on the back end. I just don't see an avenue where it's a very reliable ceiling for Ruggs in this Raiders offense this week. Again, I think you got to give them some sort of an adjustment period here to transition between your head coach of three or four seasons now in John Gruden to your interim head coach that you've promoted from the assistant coaching position. So a lot of moving pieces for the Raiders right now. I'm sticking away from that offense outside of Darren Waller if at all possible this week. I think he's the one factor that doesn't really change or get impacted too much because that's Derek Carr's guy. That's the most reliable player on this Raiders offense. But other than that, I'm staying clear of a lot of my Raiders fantasy players this week. Here we go. Just the Giants logo. The New York Giants, pass catchers, I'm sitting them this week. I talked about this with Devontae Booker, who also I'm giving away a lot of my must-sit running backs who are in a separate video. But man, this Giants offense has just gotten trashed with injuries. And who knows, they might have some of the players available to them on Sunday. We don't currently know because it's early on in the week and they haven't been able to finalize things. But Danny Dimes is in concussion protocol. Got knocked out of the game against the Dallas Cowboys. We'll see. It's immediately a red flag if Mike Glennon is your starting quarterback. And then boom, you've got Kenny Galladay, a hyperextended knee. He's out of there. Kadarius Toney with an ankle, not looking like he's going to be ready to go. And his coach did say the injury's not season-ending, but obviously that means it's probably a lot more than at least a injury you can fix in a week. We'll see, though. Keep your ears close to the ground on Toney. And then Sterling Shepard and Darius Slayton, battling hamstring injuries. They've been out 2 games now. We'll see. Maybe one or both of them can make it back here, but it's no guarantee. You could be walking into this game with Jalen Ramsey being the top corner on the other side of the ball, with John Ross and CJ Board as your top 2 pass catchers. Do not start either of those 2 players. I'm assuming that whoever gets touched by Jalen Ramsey is going to get locked up and not see any production. The run game is going to be really easy for the Rams to focus in and hone in on to stop for this Giants offensive attack this week. And that's going to make them have to throw the football, and I don't think it's going to end too good for them when you've got Aaron Donald on the other side of things rushing the passer, again with Jalen Ramsey on the back end. Now, that number 2 cornerback spot has been a bit of a strugglesome position for the Rams this year, and they've had some issues covering guys, but it's been players a lot better than CJ Board and John Ross. So I think that New York just has a really ugly time this week. It's unfortunate because it's injuries that have literally crushed them here for this week's matchups, but I'm not a fan of any New York Giants wide receivers this week. Allen Robinson. So Chicago takes on the Packers this week. This, again, is less so the matchup, more so the trend that I've been seeing with Allen Robinson. And I'm sure a lot of Allen Robinson owners and all of you have seen this as well. He just hasn't been the same. This Bears passing offense has not lived up to, I don't want to say expectations, because they weren't supposed to be this dynamite passing group that was laying out darts all over the field. But A-Rob, for a player who is supposed to be a low-end top 12 fantasy receiver and a very, very safe floor wideout for this year, has been anything but safe and anything but dependable. 1 touchdown on the entire season. and he doesn't have a game with more than 63 yards receiving. That's not good. That's not cutting it. Allen Robinson's better than this. He's more talented than this. But this is what the Bears offense has allowed him to produce, and this is what they've allowed him to come out here and give us for production so far this season. And until this Bears offense does something to indicate that they're going to produce numbers otherwise than what we've seen so far, I can't trust him. And trust is a big deal for a lot of us in our weekly lineup choices. Eric Stokes also played very, very good coverage on Jamar Chase in the reps he had against Chase last week. He did have a couple nice pass breakups. Now, Jamar Chase did have a massive game, but those were on guess who. Most of the time, it was Kevin King that was frying deep. If you are a NFL fan that watches defenses and knows the players I'm talking about right now for the Packers, I assume Eric Stokes will take a Rob for most of this game, and that's not like it is a shutdown matchup from a cornerback stance, but he is a good corner. He can stick with receivers, but again, this goes back to it's way more of a situational thing. It has a lot more to do with the Bears, the productivity that they've had and the usage they've had for A-Rob this season than it does for the matchup with the Green Bay Packers, who are already down Jair Alexander, and he's on the IR. So you're down your top corner. I'm still saying sit A-Rob this week. That's an indication, again, Bears issue more so than the matchup. And then A.J. Brown here. This one, to me, could go both ways. I see him as a boom or bust option. I'm going to use this as a bit more of a precautionary tale here than an all-out must-sit situation. But with A.J. Brown's productivity this year, it has not been all that good. He has no games with more than 49 receiving yards this season, and he's only got one touchdown. The ceiling that we all expected from him has not been there. Now, he had a hamstring injury, missed a game, got pulled out of one very early because he sustained that injury, and last week he was also very quiet. Now, I like to give receivers grace and a grace period to shake off the dust their first week returning from an injury, so I don't read too much into the performances that they have in those games, because I think you got to get back into the right mental space and just play football again, even if it was just a 1 week injury that you're out for. Now, there's some exceptions where, like Christian McCaffrey coming back from his hamstring, you're just not going to have a choice. You have to start him. But in particular for the wide receiver position, that's something I like to do. Brown here in his second game back, though. So we're back to full-on expectations for A.J. Brown. I am wanting him to produce the numbers that we know he's capable of. But the first game back is the Buffalo Bills, and this has been one of the tougher matchups for opposing fantasy wide receivers. Tyreek Hill had a pretty quiet game for his standards last week. Tre'Davious White has been doing a heck of a job and really doing a number on a lot of top receivers in NFL lineups throughout the course of this season. Chase Claypool was very, very quiet week one. He basically shut down Brandon Cooks after the loud start he had to this season. Now the Texans offense and Brandon Cooks have been kind of sputtering the last 2 weeks here. But the point being, Tre'Davious White has been the main person who has been causing these quiet numbers for fantasy football wide receivers. So I'm expecting Tre'Davious White to spend a large portion of this game covering A.J. Brown. And although A.J. is a player who I respect 100% as a true number one option in an NFL lineup and in a fantasy lineup, this is not the matchup you want to see for him here. He's going to have to somehow haul in a deep ball over the top and probably score a long touchdown to get the job done here, because I think the Bills are going to do as much as they can to slow down Derrick Henry, and while that might not be entirely possible to do through 4 quarters, that's what the focal point of this defensive style and this game plan for Week 6 is going to be for the Titans. So if AJ can capitalize and hit one over the top, maybe you're talking about a respectable game, but given the fact that he's not a target magnet and that this Titans offense is not a high-volume passing football team, there's a chance we could have a very, very quiet game from him yet again this season. Alrighty, those are 5 must-bench wide receivers for Week 6 fantasy football action. If you've got any questions for me, again, drop those down in the comment section below. Go check out the SFS merch in the description of today's video, and let me know how I can be of service to you this fantasy season. I'm here to help you guys out. I want to try and be the most interactive fantasy channel out there for you all, and obviously help you guys win those league championships at the end of the year. So go check out some of the other videos I've posted already for Week 6 action. We've got a ton of them out already, and there's a lot of stuff for yourself to get your hands on. With that being said, I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.